all. This is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from Drbeen.com. Welcome to one more show. So, as usual, today we have Paul Bork with us. He is the EndBeen because he's praying and hoping for the end of pandemic soon. And we will go over the latest COVID stats as we do every week. So, Paul, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Naveen. Going to start talking about China here. And first, I wanted to give a perspective. Here is the US and China. So their overall rate is extremely low. But if we take a look at the rate and take the US off, you can see that it's going up just the same as all the other ones did with the Omicron. And so they're trying to control it, but it looks like it's the same kind of slope. And you can see here with the US slope, the US is much, much higher. You can see that the slope and the shape of the curve is pretty much the same, and this could keep going on up until it reaches some higher point. A little later, we'll look at various countries and see how they have responded to the Omicron going forward.
And they have locked down so many so many cities, large cities. Almost millions of people are back in the lockdown. And I think this was their zero COVID policy, which is, dare I say, that it is backfiring because people were just so naive. Their immune systems were so COVID naive that Omicron is now breaking through.
Right. And the Wall Street Journal had an article about their response, and their leader, the vice premier who's in charge of their policy, said they were going to continue the strategy without wavering or relaxing. So they're doing the same thing. And here are some of the items that they said. Mild and asymptomatic patients who had been going into the hospitals are not going to be doing that anymore. They're supposed to go to 5 newly constructed centralized isolation facilities. They're building 30,000, the capacity for 30,000 in this province. And they have a university prediction that 35,000 infections in early April is what they're committed to now. If we go back and look at the shape, they're saying that with all these effects in place, they think that it's going to go that high. And it may, of course, go a lot higher. We'll see. They banned travel to and from this province, which is right next to Hong Kong, shut down all the non-essential businesses. People are required to stay home. One person from each household can go out every other day for food and necessities. Multiple rounds of testing. They've increased the testing to not just be PCR, but they're using lateral flow, again, because of the numbers are going to overwhelm their existing behavior. And if they can't test and can't find it to isolate people, this whole program is going to fall apart because if people don't know they're sick, there's not much that they can do, and they can't trace other folks around them. So they're locking the whole province down in some other cities. 7 of their hospitals are being emptied to create space for at-risk and seriously ill COVID patients. And last month, they approved Paloxavir for mild and moderate COVID. And I think that's the counterfeit amino acid that gets incorporated in. And then there was another compound to keep the amino acid from being taken apart too soon. They're diverting 100 international flights per week for the next week out of the local airport into other places around China. And one can wonder if that's going to be just like the flights from Wuhan and China that came to the rest of the world, whether that's going to just seed things across China as they try to protect this area from more flights coming in. Truck drivers that are coming from Hong Kong have to change, I think, 3 times before they get there. And they're continuing. So that's what the Wall Street Journal said and sort of what I know about China.
Got it. Just a very quick comment to Purple Diamond. Will US see another spike with BA2? So it seems like there is another spike, and the 20 to 30% of the cases are now BA2. And CDC just sent a message or announced that BA2 cases are now increasing. So it seems like there will be a surge. We'll see how big.
Right.
And I'm going to talk about that. Sorry.
We'll have some data to address that.
Awesome.
This is showing various countries. We have the US here. We have the UK in sort of the purple. And we have Germany coming up, and they started to come down, but they're coming back up again. We have the Netherlands with the Hong Kong, big peak and coming down. But if you look, the curve isn't continuing to come down straight. It looks like it's curving back up. It's starting to curve back up with an inflection point right about there. And so are they going to get a double dip on this or not? I don't know. We've got Iceland. Iceland is coming up here and then coming back down. We have South Korea that is going up, not nearly as steep as some other countries, but it is going quite high. And then we have Bernina coming up, and it's coming down. Here are the latest rates of them. You can see some of these numbers are quite high. So next, if we look at the UK, we have the UK official data here going up, coming down, and then starting up again. The COVID symptom tracker seems to have 3 waves. And this middle wave was missed. UK stopped doing the testing. They stopped having mandatory reporting of the test results and a number of things. So perhaps they're missing some of the cases, but it looks like they're bouncing around right at this level. And I think, as you know, I think the next slide will show percent
And
testing.
Paul, a little later, are we going to have, that's what I was asking, hospitalizations and deaths?
Yes, just a very little bit later. So we have here the percentage testing positive for the COVID. And again, we have the first wave, we have sort of the last wave, and it didn't go back down, it just bumped up here. And so it may well be that this COVID symptom tracker may be missing some of the cases too. It's hard to know what you don't know, and all I can really talk about is what's reported. And the deaths seemed low, but we're getting it sort of coming up again, and we've got a little spike here for it. But this death should be before, this is over a week old, and this should be before the beginning of that next peak. So this, if anything, should be the last one. And 3 vaccines, they're at 82%, antibodies 98%. So essentially everybody has had COVID or a vaccine.
So hold on. So 98.4% have antibodies.
Right.
And we are still getting more cases.
Yeah, if you go back, not just more cases, we're getting, it looks like the same. In fact, this peak right here, it isn't starting to come down. Looks like it'll be higher than the prior peak. I don't know if it'll be this high or higher, but if it was following this path, it would have already started to come down, and it has not. It looks like with all this, they're not getting much reduction at all. But if we look at this, the social distancing is dropping as down and down and down.
That's interesting. So it will be, in the coming weeks, it will be interesting to see if this repeat exposure is actually ending up with even milder cases, and not because Omicron BA2 is milder, it seems to be more transmissible and has some properties of Delta, but because more people are protected. So, for example, I think I got re-exposed about a week ago, but this time I got the runny nose and headache and I was a little tired in the morning, but by the evening I was okay. But during the day, I even coughed once or twice, even during the lecture as well. So if that is what is happening, that more of a human trait now, that every so often there is a day of even lesser than common cold, then that's okay. But if it is going to cause more destruction, then that would be concerning.
Right. And the one thing that we don't know yet is how much long COVID comes with that. Are we still getting the same percentage, 10, 20% of people who are going to be thrown into long COVID? And once you've had COVID and haven't had long COVID and you get it again, are you sort of immune? It was a characteristic of your body, or each time do you have the same percentage chance? I mean, I don't know that.
Yeah, agreed. So Denise says you likely were exposed, Dr. Bean. Look at your wastewater graph there from last week. Yeah, so I had one day of all the symptoms, and even my wife had a day of all the symptoms. And then just by the evening, we felt better.
And you had a prophylactic that you were taking, right? Or you had it, not a prophylactic, but you had a therapeutic drug that you were taking, right?
So this time when it happened, I was taking nothing and I took nothing.
Okay, very good. People are talking about Omicron BA1 versus BA2, and so we'll talk about that. The little bitty part in the graph is the BA2, and the big part is the BA1. Okay, and this is over time rather than an instant from our world in data. But if we blow up part of it, you can see Brazil doesn't seem to have found any, or Paraguay. Argentina has some BA2s. Mexico has just a little. The US has the most. Cuba has some. Canada, and if we move over here, we can see the South Africa. Angola has about half, and Madagascar. But a lot of the countries are not having very much at all. The UK is 3/4. Ireland, nothing. Spain, just a quarter. You see, there's a huge difference between this. It's BA2 is not taking over the same way BA1 did with Delta. And
So did I hear correctly that the BA2 is not competing with BA1 and taking over as fast as BA1 took over from Delta?
right. That I think is what we're seeing. Let me see. How can I get that out of here? Okay. Move to front. Let me reshare this. Nope, that's not the one. Okay, you have it back? Yes. Okay, and here we can see to get the rest of the world in here. Why isn't that going on? All right. Anyway, here we can see Australia has a little bit. Indonesia has quite a bit more BA2. And you can see your favorite countries here as we go through. But you can see it's not comprehensively taking over the same way BA1 did for Delta.
Got it. And that may be because, so I know that somebody was discussing with me today that it is a little more transmissible. But at the same time, Omicron originally had caused so many cases that there is a lot of immunity developed in people, either from vaccine or from the infection. So whatever is a new variant, it has a challenge to surmount all of that. And so it seems like we would just keep getting lesser and lesser intensity, even when the virus is bad.
It could be, but the UK had over 95% before the BA1 came. So again, I don't know how much difference there is or what's causing it, but there is. If we take a look here, you can see this is just Omicron. This is just the 21K BA1 and BA2, and you can see the percentage and see the curve slowly coming up. And I'm going to have.
And same thing for Denmark as well. Denmark has a lot of BA2.
Mm-hmm. And if I go. Reshare this one. Okay, here we have, this is Delta, and we have the other prior ones coming in for the world, and you can see put together these coming in and going up. And we have Okay. I'm going to have to get out of the. Okay.
So while you're doing it, so John Snyder says Denmark had a mutated BA2 or has, so does Hong Kong.
They're all mutated. They're all mutated. But what's interesting to me is if you take a look at the slope of this coming up, it isn't until about this point right here that the slope of the BA2 is higher than the slope of the Omicron BA1. So
By the
while
way, we
BA,
cannot see your mouse cursor if you have it.
see it
We
here.
can just see this BA2 growth versus BA1 and two graphs. Now I can see it.
Yeah. So it's only right about here where the slope or the rate of increase of BA2 is faster than BA1. And so here it's coming up like it's not having much resistance. You get an inflection point. It's flattening out. And so if you look at the BA2, it doesn't look like it changed. It's just going the way it was going before. So it's running
Got it.
over everything, but just going slower. I mean, it's
Yeah.
outcompeting BA1, but that point only occurred in the world at this point right here. Before that, BA1 was increasing faster. So apparently, BA2 can outcompete BA1, but BA1 outcompetes Delta much more than BA2 does. And so where most of them had BA2 that had Delta there, it was going faster. I mean, that seems that that's consistent. We don't know that that really is what occurred.
Interesting.
Then this is the clades across the board, and we have BA1, BA2, but we also have included the other ones. And you see Spain still has a little of Delta. Portugal doesn't seem to have any reported. UK doesn't have any. Ireland doesn't. And you can see the various countries that there still is a little bit left. And so if what I thought before is true, then in France and Spain and a couple other countries, the BA2 will continue to increase faster than BA1.
Interesting.
And
So
now,
my takeaway from this much of the discussion so far about BA2 is that no, it is the scare that is developing slowly in the news. I don't think it deserves that scare.
no. I mean, the biggest scare is that you're going to have BA1, you're going to get infected with BA1 again before BA2 gets there. But the things we talked about before, the reinfection with BA2 was much less after you had gotten BA1. So, and BA1 is much better understood than BA2. So you're probably better off getting BA1 first and then not getting BA2 than missing BA1 and then getting BA2. Not that I'm suggesting anyone goes and gets it, but just saying, if we take a look at it from dealing with patient perspective. Now I'm going to try to let's see. Now I'm going to try to see if we can go. Okay. No, we're still seeing this one, so I need to change my sharing. Stop sharing. Share. Okay. Now we should have this live here going forward. And so this is what we had been looked at before. And here we have BA1 and the BA2 here. And it may help to zoom in a little and
Yes,
take
guys,
it.
sorry, I was muted and I was speaking. My apologies.
But we can take a look here if we want. And we can look across the world and see the BA1s and the BA2s live on this. China is very, very small because the size of it is the number of cases reported per capita, I believe, or it may be total. But that appears to be all BA1. Indonesia, a quarter. And so we can look, you can find your favorite country as we scan through if you want. And now this is showing that Mexico doesn't have any, and last time it had a little bitty piece. So this is live data, so they changed their data a little bit.
So how is Israel doing? John 653 is also asking for Israel. K-Star, yes, I was muted again. I'm so sorry. I tried to keep myself muted when Paul is presenting, but I think I'm just going to leave myself unmuted now.
Yeah, there's
Bob says,
Israel.
is there an agenda here? Yes, we're looking at the stats and BA2.
Okay, then we can come down here, and this is the graph that we had before coming up. And you can see the various points in time where it did. But I want to focus now on this diversity piece here. And I've honed in and just looking at the spike protein. And again, if we take a look at the whole, this is the whole genome of the virus, focusing on the Wuhan, the first one that was sequenced. And you notice just as Dr. Drbeen was talking about the first part and the last part of the, having a key, these are, separated out. So the first couple and the last several proteins aren't included. I think these, I don't know, I think these are proteins that they're talking about, or they're codons. But if we look at just the spike section here, we're going across the spike protein and we're going across the spike protein, and the vertical is the diversity that's being found. So if we take a look at the spot in the middle, they have not seen any variation in that spot, and the ones that are small, they're only seeing one variation, and it may be if these are just errors in replication, and if they're random, that would mean that all the other ones were non-functional or didn't survive enough, were outcompeted. And so these are the only locations where we're seeing that. And you can see that this 22,600 seems to be much more variation than anything around it.
Interesting.
And we can go back and look at, so that's the spike protein that we've heard so much about, and the question of, are these variations causing trouble with the antibody binding zone, or the T cells, or the other specific response? And you can see that there's a whole bunch of this spike protein that isn't getting much change at all.
Hmm.
And if we go back and put the whole thing on, and see, this is the spike, which seems to be one of the areas that's changing the most. If you think about it from the virus's standpoint, if this was another, attacking bats before, this is a section that had to change in order to use the ACE2 and to come in. And it's probably just like or similar to the variable range or variable part of antibody versus the continuous part. And the continuous part has to stay to do the rest of the function. And this is the part that needs to change in order to be able to get into another species or come in another way into a cell.
Got it.
And so that's a spike. And let's see, and then this one here. And this again is having just the two of them together. And again, if we look, this is
BA1 and BA2.
Yeah, this is BA1 and BA2, where the other was looking at across all of them. So this is the variation from BA1 and BA2 in the spike.
Hmm.
And this should be with all of them. And then let me contract it back down to the spike. And so this is the total, and this is the BA1 and BA2. And you can see there's a lot of variation in the BA1 and BA2.
Hmm.
And that is pretty much what I have pulled together.
Got it. Frankie Blast lead vocal says, which one has a Moderna patent? So I think that sequence that matches with the Moderna's patent is in all of these variants. It's in the furin cleavage site. Excellent. So this is the update. Thank you very much for pulling it together.
Right. I think there's one other thing. Where is that? Doug asked a question last time about the graphs and what was there, and I pulled that out. I'm trying to see, where did that go? I don't seem to be able to find it. And the other thing, just while I'm looking for this, another thing is that China's vaccine doesn't seem to work as well as some of the others. So that might be a reason that they're continuing to respond the way that they were.
Got it.
I had that open. But what we were talking about yesterday, the graph that we had yesterday, the study, let's see, that will be.
No worries. We can look at that next week.
Okay, but that one, it was a percentage change that was up the side. And one of the things that didn't make sense to me is some of the graphs seem to start from a 0% change, and some of them started with a fair amount of change already included in the graph. It doesn't change the direction that that they were talking about, but the absolute numbers might be a little different. I don't know what they were. I didn't read the whole paper and understand it, so I don't know what they were trying to do. But if you're just comparing one versus the other, it would seem like the brain size, you would bring them both to 0 to start with, and in some, they were a little offset. But still, the direction of change was the same. It just would have been a little smaller. And maybe they put at age 0, it was the same. Maybe they projected back or something. I don't know.
Got it. Cool. So thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for pulling the data together. Cool Beans, thank you very much as well for hearing us out with the COVID stats. So I'm going to hang up now, and I would join you again in 5 minutes, and we'll do chit chats. So Paul,
Very
thank
good.
you
Thank you.
very much.
You're quite welcome.